While your outer life has appeared ordinary, something unseen has been ripening in silence, a force so magnetic and untamed that it bends the atmosphere before you even speak. Not a skill, not a habit, but a kind of inner voltage that doesn't just change rooms, it rearranges them. You've been unknowingly hosting a rare energy, and now it's beginning to make its presence impossible to ignore. The shift isn't loud, but it's undeniable, the kind that reshapes everything without asking permission. The clues have been subtle but consistent, glances that linger too long, conversations that suddenly freeze, and interactions that feel oddly misaligned for no clear reason. People you used to flow with now seem unsure of how to hold your gaze. What once felt safe now feels suspicious. But it's not paranoia, it's perception sharpening. These aren't random moods or accidental vibes. You're not losing your mind, you're gaining clarity. What once passed as normal is now revealing its distortion, and your instincts are no longer requesting distance, they're demanding it. There are moments in life when an inner metamorphosis begins to stretch far beyond personal growth, and what once felt like self-improvement turns out to be a ripple in something much older, much deeper, much more collective. If your heart overflows with God's blessings, let that love shine. Click the super thank you button and give $40 or more to plant seeds of faith that will impact countless lives. Your generosity reflects His abundance. Be a vessel of His grace and watch His kingdom flourish through you. This isn't just a turning point, it's a generational frequency shift that quietly rewires the rules of engagement. Some people have started to notice, though they don't have the language for it. Their curiosity masks discomfort. Their questions feel rehearsed. Their affection now carries a trace of inspection. They've sensed what you've become, even if they can't articulate it, a presence that destabilizes any structure built on control. The kind of energy that can't be shaped, bribed, or boxed. The games they used to play no longer work. Strategies built on predictability have begun to collapse because the blueprint they once used to map your behavior no longer applies. They've been trying to track your steps with outdated compasses, unaware that your entire internal terrain has shifted. While they still rely on tactics rooted in performance and advantage, you're moving from something deeper, and it throws them off. What they missed is this: your perception has leveled up without needing permission. You no longer wait for proof, you feel the code before it's spoken. It's not paranoia, it's a silent surveillance built into your intuition. That quiet pulse in your chest when someone smiles too wide. That invisible pull back when a compliment feels off-key. What you're sensing isn't danger in the traditional sense, it's the scent of interference. And every part of you is starting to recognize it before it fully takes form. You're not here by chance. Feel the pull? Tap join to unlock truth, purpose, and a tribe that gets it. This is more than a membership, it's your calling. Some people walk into rooms unnoticed, but others carry a type of presence that draws on eyes like gravity. That kind of presence doesn't just attract admiration, it provokes a quiet hunger. Not everyone wants to harm it. Some want to harness it, shape it, mold it to serve their own agenda. The pursuit isn't loud or violent, it's polite smiles, unnecessary favors, questions wrapped in compliments. What they're after isn't your downfall, it's your essence, your drive, your spark. And the real danger lies in the softness of their approach, the friendliness of their disguise. That's why the moments you've dismissed as mood swings or social fatigue weren't random at all. Those spontaneous urges to change direction, those conversations that felt sticky without reason, they've been signals. Over time, something inside you has refined itself into a tracking system, not for paths or people, but for motives. And it doesn't need logic to speak, it simply alerts. Not with words, but with that heavy stillness in the chest or a sudden shift in atmosphere. Now, it's not just about noticing tone or body language. It's far deeper. You've learned to interpret the silence between words, to measure the weight of a gaze, to understand who's trying too hard and who's hiding their hand. It's like the air itself begins whispering when something is off. And while others walk blindfolded through rooms full of performance, you catch the whispers under the laughter, the calculations behind the casual. What's wild is how subtle the pattern can be. A casual meeting that lingers in your memory for no apparent reason. A new connection that leaves a strange aftertaste, even if everything they said sounded right. Then later, pieces fall into place. Motives surface. Real stories come out. And what was once a passing intuition now looks like a prophetic download, one you didn't ask for, but desperately needed. Some messages arrive dressed in daylight, but the ones meant for your transformation prefer the shadows of sleep. Lately, what seemed like imagination after dark has been revealing coded signals, veiled insights, and reflections too detailed to be dismissed. These aren't empty scenes or mental noise, they're encrypted blueprints, passing through the veil when your waking mind is still too distracted to hear clearly. What unfolds in those quiet hours has been offering previews of choices, people, and crossroads you haven't consciously reached yet. If you've been touched by God's goodness, don't keep it to yourself. Click super thank you and sow a gift of $40 or more to help spread His light. Your giving becomes a ripple of grace, blessing hearts and building His kingdom. Let His overflow pour through you. And those images, as strange as they sometimes feel, have been preparing you with more precision than any conversation ever could. You've begun to understand the rhythm of this silent instruction, how it doesn't shout, but it always prepares. There was a time when you'd wake up doubting your impressions, wrestling logic against feeling, hanging on in places you were already outgrowing. But that phase dissolved when you realized the danger of staying longer than the signal suggested. Now, you don't ask the moment to explain itself. You respond. When a shift hits your gut, even if no one else sees what you see, you act. You've stopped arguing with your senses, especially in environments that require strategic withdrawal. While others still extend grace where they shouldn't, you're already adjusting what you share, knowing how quiet deceit can be. This shift hasn't only touched your public life, it's filtered into intimacy as well. Where you once excused erratic behavior in the name of potential, you now spot performance from sincerity like two different temperatures in the same room. That old pattern of chasing after sudden charm that fades too fast? You've outgrown it. You know the game. When interest is used like a lure, only to be pulled away the moment your attention is caught, you don't play along. You don't explain your standards. You just watch the pattern unfold, then walk around it like a cracked floorboard you no longer step on. Some connections thrive on confusion, the kind that leaves you questioning whether their inconsistency is your fault. But that confusion no longer holds you. You no longer gravitate toward those who perform silence like it's a prize to be won. You lean into relationships that show up in full color, people whose words don't wobble and whose attention doesn't shift depending on who's watching. Even within family circles, where guilt has long been disguised as love, you've learned to listen without absorbing, to care without caving, and to recognize patterns that once blurred your peace. Certain relatives once mastered the art of emotional interruption, inserting chaos into your joy like clockwork. Or turning every boundary you set into a personal betrayal. But what they didn't anticipate was your ability to redefine closeness, not as proximity, but as energetic respect. You've come to understand that love doesn't mean absorbing dysfunction. Sometimes it means pausing the story so you can stop playing the role they wrote for you without your permission. The old titles, fixer, peacekeeper, safety net, no longer belong to you. Letting go of those unspoken jobs rewrote the script. And surprisingly, the ones who genuinely care adapted. They began to notice how your calm wasn't detachment, but preservation. And that your distance wasn't punishment, but protection. They met the new version of you with less resistance than you feared and more respect than you expected. But this transformation didn't just heal you, it started shaking loose illusions in others. People began to question the roles they've been playing in their own lives. Without trying to, you've become a mirror. Not everyone likes what they see. That's why some are scrambling to box you in, to shrink your impact before it expands even further. But it's too late. Your presence alone short-circuits deception. Not because you call it out, but because you make truth safer to breathe. You've also become the silent compass in the spaces you work. Others come to you not because you're loud, but because you're clear. They've watched how you spot power plays before they begin, how you shift course before things collapse. You read intention the way others read words. Noticing who leans in when the stakes rise. Who collects information instead of offering help. Who rehearses charm but forgets to be kind. And by the time most people realize there's a problem, you've already walked past it, untouched. Some people are tuned to what's said, others are tuned to what's building behind the silence. You belong to the second category. You've developed a way of sensing undercurrents long before they break the surface. It's not about suspicion, it's about alignment with the unseen. This ability hasn't just protected you, it's quietly redirected the paths of people watching from a distance. People you'll never meet have adjusted their own instincts simply by observing how you move through tension without losing yourself. Someone once overheard how you navigated a passive-aggressive exchange and realized they didn't have to entertain every provocation. Another person silently watched you exit a lopsided connection and found the courage to do the same in their private world. These weren't loud lessons. They were quiet confirmations that self-respect is possible, even in places where control is the currency. That's what makes your presence so disruptive to systems built on confusion. You don't preach escape, you embody it. And in doing so, you unravel their strongest chains, not with resistance, but with clarity. Because when one person chooses alignment over approval, it sends shockwaves. Others wake up. Others notice the cracks. And that's what breaks the machine, not rebellion, but remembrance. What once felt like simple awareness has now grown into full-spectrum perception. In any gathering, whether professional or personal, you catch the emotional architecture immediately. You read the glances people think are hidden. You register the shifts in energy before anyone speaks. You don't just see who's who, you feel what's at play. You clock the ones who smile too wide, stand too close, perform too much. Your nervous system files it all before your mind needs to explain it. And that's why the honest ones seek your presence. Not because you say the perfect thing, but because your very energy filters out what's fake. Around you, strategies fall flat. Manipulators lose timing. The usual games glitch under your field. You don't expose people, they unravel on their own. You are the mirror they didn't expect. And not everyone's ready for what it reflects. There's something about the way your presence rearranges the atmosphere, like it demands truth without speaking a word. The more refined your energy has become, the harder it is for people to pretend around you. Those who once thrived on illusion now feel exposed without you even confronting them. Some don't even try anymore. They retreat before you arrive, not out of respect, but out of fear that their usual performances will crumble too fast in your presence. And as those old characters quietly fade from your stage, new ones step in with clearer intentions. Connections are cleaner, conversations flow without hidden strings, and your circle begins to reflect the depth you've always carried. With that shift, tangible abundance follows. It's not magic, it's alignment. Because when you stop bleeding time, energy, and trust into black holes, life stops echoing lack and starts responding with overflow. You've come to value your focus like a rare resource, and that change alone has shifted everything. Where once you gave freely to prove your heart, now you give intentionally to protect your purpose. This has drawn in not just better people, but better outcomes. But understand, not everyone celebrates your clarity. Some are calculating their return, hoping to slip through your new discernment dressed in nostalgia, guilt, or false humility. These aren't random tensions, they're echoes of strategies dressed in new skin. What you're dealing with now isn't surface-level friction, it's precise, targeted distortion wrapped in friendly tones and familiar faces. Invitations masked as healing. Advice crafted to confuse. Paths disguised as divine timing but designed to loop you back into old patterns. This is warfare that doesn't swing weapons, it whispers suggestions. And unless you stay anchored in your truth, it knows how to sound like your own voice. There's a reason you've been feeling a strange tension behind sudden messages, vague check-ins, or out-of-nowhere friendliness from people who once disrupted your alignment. These aren't random occurrences, they're energetic probes disguised as casual reconnects. Whether the senders are conscious of it or not, these moments often serve a deeper function. When a soul begins disrupting dysfunctional structures, the environment around it starts testing its resilience. This isn't mere timing, it's calibration at the spiritual level. As your clarity sharpens, the forces that once benefited from your confusion start triggering soft resistance. Individuals may show up under the guise of peace, but the real question is whether you'll recognize the patterns beneath their tone. Because the moment you become a threat to manipulation, the frequency shifts, and new distractions arrive dressed like healing. But this time, something within you no longer seeks reunion for closure. You've seen through too many masks to fall for performance again. What they didn't realize was that while they were analyzing your past moves, you were already operating from a different layer, one they couldn't trace. There was no memo, no confrontation. You simply moved with such unexplainable precision that every trap they set collapsed in their hands. Every space you exited had a reason you couldn't yet explain, and only later did the clarity catch up to the wisdom your spirit already knew. It's only now becoming clear how far ahead you've been. The job you declined was being positioned as a cage. That connection you withdrew from was never built on truth. The circle you stopped feeding was secretly orchestrating your isolation. But their plans unraveled not because you fought, but because you vanished. Quietly. Without defense. Without debate. And they're still trying to reverse engineer your silence. The most remarkable part? You never needed a strategy. You weren't dodging bullets, you were navigating by intuition sharp enough to dismantle plots before they even formed. And every time you voiced a truth others were too afraid to name, you loosened the hold of deception on someone else's life. Without even knowing it, you've been activating protection in people just by existing as proof that discernment is survival, and freedom doesn't always announce itself. There's a quiet strength that rises when someone stops explaining their worth to people determined not to see it. That strength has become the atmosphere around you. It's not loud, but it's unmistakable. When chaos knocks, you don't flinch. When manipulation creeps in, it doesn't find a door. You've chosen stillness where others choose noise, and that decision echoes through every space you enter. Without trying, you've become a contrast to everything false. This contrast acts like a pulse. It brings clarity to those who've been searching for something real and makes those wearing masks feel exposed without being called out. You don't need to correct anyone anymore, your presence alone shifts the room. The more you stayed loyal to your inner compass, the more your entire energy began sending a silent signal: you can't fake your way into my peace. And that signal travels. There are people who've watched you from the sidelines trying to decode what makes you different. They've observed how you navigate conflict without losing your center, how you lose people without losing yourself, and how you walk away without leaving behind bitterness. But they keep missing the core truth: this isn't a technique. It's a transformation. You're not performing balance, you've become it. The ones trying to replicate your strength without doing the inner work always fall short. They copy the tone, the vocabulary, even the posture, but it never lands. Because what you carry can't be rehearsed. It was earned in silence, and solitude, and seasons where no one clapped for your progress. While they chased the look of growth, you've embodied the root of it. What they didn't expect was your detachment. The version of you they once knew would have responded, explained, justified. But now, they receive stillness, not out of spite, but clarity. Your silence isn't empty. It's loaded with awareness. The moment someone reaches back out with performative change, you already know. Not because of what they say, but because of what they don't. And that's the difference now. You don't respond to words. You read timelines. You've learned that patterns never lie, even when people do. You've stopped handing out forgiveness to avoid tension. You don't need the loop anymore. One cycle was enough to teach you everything you needed to know. Now, your discernment isn't just sharp, it's automatic. You spot emotional bribery masked as affection. You sense rehearsed vulnerability before it lands. You know when someone wants proximity for your energy, not your healing. And instead of negotiating with your gut, you honor it on the first alarm. That commitment has rearranged your entire path. Doors have opened because your energy isn't scattered anymore. Opportunities have aligned because you're no longer accessible to what drains you. And even though certain people may never admit it, your boundary became their mirror. It showed them where they still betray themselves. And somewhere, deep down, they know. They know they can't re-enter your life through performance. They know their usual charm doesn't hold weight anymore. And what terrifies them the most, what keeps them circling silently, is that you didn't just walk away. You outgrew the trap. And that kind of freedom can't be unlearned. Some people don't return to reconnect, they return to reestablish access. And while they may not say it outright, their timing always reveals the truth. They show up in moments of instability, reaching out under the guise of catching up, hoping your empathy still overrides your boundaries. But what they encounter now is a version of you that knows how to respond without re-entering the cycle. You no longer bend under nostalgia, you rise with awareness. You've mastered the art of keeping your dignity intact without needing to tear anyone down. A calm acknowledgement, a brief blessing, a gentle closing of the door, that's all it takes. And that restraint cuts deeper than any argument ever could. It removes their ability to twist the narrative. Because what do you do with someone who doesn't retaliate, doesn't chase, doesn't return, but also doesn't shrink? This evolution isn't just personal, it's revolutionary. You've disrupted the very script that manipulative people rely on. Their world depends on reaction, on guilt, on your emotional labor. But you've chosen another route, one where freedom doesn't ask for permission and peace doesn't require applause. In doing so, you've cracked the illusion that people must stay entangled in systems that drain them. What's wild is how your very life now challenges long-held beliefs. It whispers to others that they too can detach without hate, move on without bitterness, succeed without compliance. You've become a quiet rebellion wrapped in grace. That's why the pushback has grown louder, not because you've harmed anyone, but because you've proven they can't hold you. This return to self has sharpened your lens. You see through intentions now, even when they're disguised as apologies or wrapped in compliments. You no longer need 10 signs to confirm a pattern. One moment of misalignment is enough. What you once would have excused, you now release. What you once feared letting go of, you now bless from afar. And because of that, your path has cleared in ways others can't explain. You've become unavailable to dysfunction in all its disguises. The people who once drained you now watch from a distance, confused by how you grew wings while they were still trying to pull you back down. And the irony? Their very schemes became the stepping stones that built your discernment. This clarity isn't accidental, it's sacred. You didn't just stumble upon strength. You earned it in moments of silence, when no one saw the restraint it took not to react. And now that inner strength radiates so clearly, even the most rehearsed manipulation can't find footing near you. You don't just survive storms anymore, you redirect them. And perhaps the most poetic part of all this is how those who tried to use you became the very evidence of your growth. Their failed attempts are now reference points in your testimony. They couldn't derail you, they defined your edge. And without knowing it, they handed you the final proof that your boundaries were never the problem. They were the cure. The more you've honored your own rhythm, the more life has responded in kind. Your resources, time, energy, money, are no longer scattered across obligations that deplete you. And because you've stopped giving in directions that don't give back, new channels have opened. What once felt like resistance around opportunity now feels like alignment in motion. The shift wasn't sudden, it was sacred. You chose self-respect over distraction, and abundance became a side effect of clarity. Wealth now flows to you not as a reward for chasing, but as a reflection of what you no longer tolerate. By stepping out of roles that asked you to betray yourself, you made room for connections that carry integrity. You stopped accepting half-hearted effort in love and started attracting wholeness. Your romantic experiences now mirror the emotional consistency you demand, not because you begged for it, but because you became it. And in a world where so many feel silenced by their uniqueness, you've become a safe haven for the things most people hide. You've made peace with the parts of your story that used to isolate you, and now they anchor others. Somewhere between the shadows and the spotlight, you've built a space where the unspoken is finally heard, and the unbelievable is finally honored. This isn't just about being seen. It's about being understood without needing to prove anything. The knowledge you've collected isn't theoretical, it's lived. And now, when doubt tries to creep in, you have real reminders, conversations, confirmations, people whose lives have changed simply because you dared to stay real in a world of performance. Leadership found you, not because you chased a title, but because people trust what feels stable. You're no longer playing family roles that drain your spirit just to keep the peace. The ones who once rejected your boundaries have either adjusted or disappeared, making space for deeper bonds built on mutual elevation instead of obligation. You've discovered how to hold space without holding baggage. You can care without being consumed, support without self-sacrifice. And that balance has sent a signal to the universe, one it continues to answer through timing, alignment, and unmistakable signs that you're exactly where you need to be. You no longer speak to impress, you simply exist with such integrity that others lean in. Your lifestyle is your message. Your inner calm is louder than any lecture. And because you no longer force anything, everything you touch becomes more magnetic. People don't just follow your words, they follow your vibration. And the effect is exponential. The people you've influenced are now doing the same for others. Your ability to name dysfunction gave someone else permission to walk away from it. Your boundaries became blueprints. Your wisdom became seed. What started as your healing has become a chain reaction of awakening, one you may never fully witness, but one that will never stop echoing.